Good morning. And as Phil's mentioned earlier, obviously lots of changes taking place across Michigan as we speak, and I'll get to that in just a second here. But I want to start again at the week in review and looking backwards first with our mean temperatures here on the left for the last week, and then the precipitation totals. These do not reflect some of last night's rainfall, but we'll talk about that in just a second. But our mean temperatures, amazingly, and it actually was a surprise when I looked at this. I had to do it. It's a double take a little bit, but because of the warm weather we had over Sunday for most areas of the state, and over the last couple of days, we actually, for eastern portions of the state, we went above normal, even though we had started that week period significantly below normal. So there was some averaging out, but as you can see, pretty close to even a degree or even two above the normal for the week. That was not really expected, but it's another testament to, again, some of the warm temperatures we did have over the last couple of days. I would also note that most of you remember, we had some beautiful conditions here over the weekend and into on Monday with strong sun or full sunshine. And we had potential evapotranspiration rates daily here in the local area that actually got up to a 1,500 inch. And that's the highest we've seen so far this year. So there actually was a little bit of some significant or noticeable drying that took place at the top. And that's important, of course, because many areas of the state have been running wetter than normal. Here, precipitation totals for the previous week still above normal, especially across northern parts of the state. There are a couple exceptions to this, but most spots had between a half and 1 inch, with larger or higher totals as you went up into upper Michigan. Central and western portions of the UP, you can see, still had over 2 inches. And again, there have been a 2 or 3 week period here where we've had above normal precipitation totals. Exceptions, the southeastern corner of lower Michigan, where less than half an inch. That's the second consecutive week that they've had that condition, and also south central portions of upper Michigan, which are still, those are the two relatively driest areas in the state. And if we look at this in terms of soil moisture here, both as a percentile on the left-hand side here, and then looking at the latest drought monitor, we've seen major reductions in the area of abnormal dryness over the last month. And that's what the drought monitor essentially reflects. But still some yellows up there again, in the northern part of the state, the southern UP, notably there. But those have declined significantly. We had a large area in northern lower Michigan that was there before, and that's gone given the above normal precipitation. And in terms of percentiles here on the left-hand side, mostly at least normal to above normal historically for our soil moisture levels. And of course, that's led to a lot of delays, a lot of anticipation here. As this season, we try to think about getting some work done and get things moving and so forth. And especially with these recent warm days, it would be nice to have at least a little drier footing on the topsoil. But we'll talk about that in just a second. There's looking at our forecast here. I'm going to start with the current map, and it's been a very, very active weather pattern across the United States here over the last couple of days. This big area, very deep area of low pressure here, southwestern Manitoba, just north of the border. You can see that on the map with a trailing cold and occluded front. That is what went through here overnight across Michigan from west to east. It's already racing off to the east and has brought much, much colder and very, very windy conditions. The radar time lapse here for the last hour or so, you can see some of the precipitation up in the northern plains, and this is worth mentioning. North Dakota has just been hit by one of the most significant blizzards they've had in some time, especially for this time of the year, for the month of April. But in some cases, snowfall totals approaching 3 feet with 40, 50 mile per hour winds. Really, really difficult conditions. You could call this, again, even for the northern Great Plains, which is saying something. This is a truly a crippling blizzard, and boy, it's one thing you really worry about. This is definitely a problem for livestock, again, because they're just this is one that suspends traffic, drifts over 10 feet high, that type of thing. So they're in their third day of that right now today, but hopefully conditions will improve there over the next 24 hours finally, and as well for us. Although again, the particular big weather system in the Midwest is going to be bringing in significantly colder weather here for the next several days. Just one little glimpse at our EnviroWeather tower site over at Sparta to show you. These are wind speeds up here on the top left, 5-minute averages. This is a 7 a.m. yesterday through 7 a.m. this morning. What I wanted to show here, these are temperatures in the lowest, essentially. Well, there's 4 different levels here in the lowest 66 feet of the atmosphere. But you can see here the big drop off in temperature that occurred here at Sparta between roughly 11 p.m. last night and about 1:30 or so. But temperature dropped between 20 and 25 degrees with that as that cold front raced through, and that very, very similar to what we saw in other portions of the state as well. One thing that, let me just move back to this map here. One thing you can see clearly on this weather map, all these black lines here, these are isobars or lines of equal pressure. We've got a very, very deep low pressure system here. There's high pressure to the north of it. There's high pressure to the south of it. And so in between, you've got a big, big change in air pressure. And of course, that's the force that drives wind one place to another. And we have that, we have that in excess here today. That's unquestionably the word to describe today, windy. These are so we will be looking at very, very strong westerly winds here today that will increase during the day, probably 20 to 30 mile per hour consistent winds here by late morning into the afternoon. These are forecast wind gusts and probably see the strongest winds with this in the early to middle parts of the afternoon into the late afternoon, but we could see some gusts over 50 miles per hour. You can see the pattern here spatially. These are the official outlooks here from the National Weather Service, but you can see many, many gusts across central and southern lower Michigan here in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range. So not surprisingly, the Weather Service has wind advisories and wind warnings out for virtually all of lower Michigan and portions of upper Michigan. But you can see especially here over central, south central and southeastern portions of lower Michigan. That's probably where we'll see the highest winds. Could see some possible problems with power outages in some areas. It's strong enough for that. But we're also looking at a windy day tomorrow as well. Not quite as bad as today. I think today, this afternoon probably will be the peak of this, and there will be winds continuing overnight, but they won't be quite as high or as strong as they are today. And so then by tomorrow morning, the cold front that went through last night, way off into the Canadian Maritimes, we have another cold front that makes its way through the area secondary from that same area of low pressure. That will bring the chance for some scattered, and I almost call it isolated showers in portions of the state. They could be, because of the temperatures we're looking at, only in the 30s and some low 40s for high temperatures here over the next couple of days. Probably some mixed precipitation, or in the northern part of the state, just snow. We could even see a little bit of light accumulations in the far northern part of the state. But in general, any precipitation with that front tomorrow will be light, a couple hundredths of an inch or less. Where it occurs, many areas will remain dry. But again, tomorrow, expect a few more cloud in the way of clouds, but that wind, west-southwesterly winds continue, not quite as strong as they are though today. And then finally, or on Saturday here, everything keeps moving right along. A lingering chance for some snow showers or flurries up in the far northern part of the state. Most of the state will actually be fair and dry and cool. And for our Easter weekend here upcoming, pretty abnormally cool and mostly dry for this time of the year. Similar conditions on Sunday, Easter Sunday, and then after tomorrow and into early Saturday, the next chance for anything significant in the way of precipitation coming on Monday, even maybe in western parts of the state overnight Sunday into Monday. That one we could see something, appreciable, and then a larger chance for precipitation probably by the middle of next week. So in the gauge here, forecast a little bit less than what we have seen. I think that's a notable forecast development here. Typically a quarter, maybe a half an inch of total rain here for the upcoming week. The vast majority of this, it should be noted, would be next week, Monday and or possibly on Wednesday of next week. So again, most of what you see here in the forecast is pushed out. We're looking at a fairly, again, mostly cool, dry, windy conditions here over the next several days. Now, looking on beyond, some developments also in our medium range forecast guidance. I'm going to start with the 6 to 10 day outlook, which is for the 19th through the 23rd. And if you look at the jet stream forecast pattern here, you can still see a trough. And that's what we have right now. It's actually further right over the Great Lakes right now. And that's why we're so cool and will remain cool for the next several days. But ultimately, this trough moves off to the east. You can see it here for the first part of next week, or that into the next week. It leads to yet another extended period of cooler than normal temperatures, with Michigan pretty much on a border or gradient here between drier than normal conditions to our south and east and wetter than normal conditions to our west. So we'll call it probably near normal precipitation. But the temperature is the pattern I want you to watch. So once we move to the 8 to 14 day time frame, note that trough has moved off further to the east out into the Western Atlantic. It's also de-amplified. It's less strong, or it's stronger, it's weaker than it was. And look at what happens with how our temperatures respond. And they move back up to above normal levels. So what I think the message is here, and yesterday was the first day we saw this change suggested, at least in this particular set of guidance, but it does suggest by the last week in the month that we will see a return of at least normal, if not even above normal temperatures here. Precip, not as much direction with that, but I think the temperature is important here. How long is this cold weather going to last? Well, the question is probably better part of a week, but then beyond that, I think we may be looking at some changes. There's a lot of figures here, but what I wanted to show here, this is looking at numerical forecast guidance here for the month of May and beyond. What is the numerical forecast guidance suggesting once we move beyond the end of April? And indeed, if you look at closely on the top two here, it suggests warmer than normal mean temperatures. It also suggests that the mean temperatures are on the left, precipitation totals on the right, maybe normal to above normal precipitation. If that sounds familiar, it's that continuing long lead forecast direction that we've seen for many of the last several weeks and actually last couple months. And that's as we move into the latter part of the spring, normal to above normal mean temperatures, normal to above normal precipitation. So that's showing up here as well with the numerical guidance. So again, a couple of signs here pointing towards a change once again as we move towards the end of April into May. And so with that, I'll wrap up with a very cool and unusually cool forecast for the next several days and very, very windy, especially for today and tomorrow. Keep an eye on that. Some isolated or scattered precipitation, snow and or rain here possible, especially tomorrow into early Saturday, but nothing significant. The most significant rainfall really in the forecast is the early part of next week. But note that our temperatures remaining several degrees below normal where they should be for this time of year, and that soil temperatures will be reflected there as well. And that continues at least through the early to middle part of next week, but then possibly looking at some changes towards warmer conditions after that. And with that, I will wrap up. And we forgot to introduce our speaker. That's my bad here. Good friend and colleague here. Our speaker for virtual breakfast next week, which will be the 21st, is Dr. Mani Singh. And Mani's going to be talking about corn and soybean planting considerations here for this year. And so don't miss that. That's a week from today.